I just want to do God's will.
The kind of revolution that the world needs is a Christian revolution.
If you want a miracle, you've got to expect it to happen.
You're the recipients of God's grace and God's blessings, and you rejoice in that reality.
Welcome to Life Today Live. I'm Randy Robinson. Great to have you here. If you follow Life Outreach International, Life Today television show, you know that we are heavily involved in missions. In fact, I will very soon be traveling to East Africa to document some of the things that we're doing there. One of the things we do is we drill water wells because there are people who don't have clean drinking water, and that impacts children the heaviest. And it's not just a problem in Africa, it's a problem in all sorts of places around the world. And it's really one of the reasons that I'm here doing what I do. We want to minister the gospel in word and deed, and giving clean drinking water to people is the gospel indeed. I would like you to meet someone else who is on the team, not a part of Life Outreach International specifically, but a part of God's kingdom. In the word and deed kind of mission. And his ministry involves buckets because there are places where there is ample water supply, or sometimes a little scarce too, but whatever the need, where a bucket that filters the water is a great solution for people. And so I just want you to see a little different aspect of delivering clean water. There's a lot of good people doing a lot of good work, but there's a difference between a good work and a God work. And when you deliver the gospel with the filling the need, it's the God work. So Christopher Beth is the founder. He calls himself the chief storyteller, which I love, of the Bucket Ministry. And you're going to hear a little bit of his story, why he does what he does, how he got into it, and maybe how you can be a part of it. So appreciate you guys watching today. Christopher, welcome to Life Today Live. Good to meet you, man.
Randy, thank you so much. I'm so excited to spend a little bit of time with you and your viewers and unpack some stories.
Well, let's start with your story. I'm curious how this even became a thing where you made it your life's goal to help people through the Bucket Ministry. How'd you get there?
Well, it didn't start out that way at all. And I was a business consultant for 35 years. And more or less, I help people make more money or help them lose less money. And honestly, I think I was okay at that. I wasn't great, but it's what I'd done forever. And it's really what I knew. And I thought maybe some point I would retire and I would get to go fishing a lot, and really never thought that I'd be fishing for men at this point. So my background is I think I lived and still do a very ordinary life, and I don't think I was really any different than the guy right next door. Just more or less trying to get through life and survive. And I had exposure to church growing up through my mother, but did not have a relationship with Jesus. And at the age of 40, I was in a car crash with my daughter, and that incident helped me understand the need for a savior and need for a friend that would never leave me. So at the age of 40, I started following Jesus, and everything changed at that point. Not necessarily fast or overnight, but the guy in the mirror now is not the same guy I knew at that age before that incident. So I think it's safe to say I'm a result of learning about Jesus and inviting him to take control of my life.
I have to ask, was your daughter okay in the accident?
Yeah, thank you for asking. She ended up breaking her back in this car crash. She was in the back seat, and the seatbelt actually ended up fracturing her back. And today she's perfectly fine, and God healed her in a miraculous way. And she, after that, ended up playing college soccer. So she was very, very good. She still suffers from the occasional back issue, but today she's healthy and everything is good. And yet we've got an amazing story to tell.
Yeah, well, I mean, you hate to have to suffer through those kinds of things, but you take what you can, and that's a pretty good takeaway from that potential kind of accident. What was it about that got your attention?
Well, it's interesting, Randy, because I think God had been speaking to me for quite some time, but here we are in this emergency room, and we're going through I'm going through with her this situation that I had no experience for.
Mm,
My wife and son weren't there yet, so here I am in this hospital. I'm a little banged up too, but she's strapped to this backboard,
mm,
crying in pain.
mm.
And the hospital was so busy, they left us out in the hallway, and just this horrible environment. And they came over and said that they needed to do all these things, and frankly, I had no ability to even cope with that situation or know what they were talking about. And I just remember there was this moment that they said they were going to have to put a catheter in her. And for a 12-year-old girl, I was freaking out for her.
Mhm.
And I remember after the doctors and nurses left me, I just knelt down next to the stretcher that she was on and invited Jesus into my life and to take control because I
Yeah.
literally had zero control of that situation.
Yeah.
And literally 5 minutes later, my wife walks in the emergency room door there at the hospital, and she was a nurse for 30 years, and she immediately took control of the scene, and she could speak their language.
Mm.
And so it was at that point, at the age of 40, I discovered I needed a friend that would never leave me.
Yeah. And I kind of love that story in the sense that, you think about the thief on the cross. Jesus didn't go, well, let's talk about your past. You haven't really been a good follower. Jesus is like, yeah, man, you finally, I've been here waiting for you. And that kind of emergency room prayer, I mean, God honors that. That's what he's waiting for, and I think that goes to the heart of God that sometimes we misunderstand. But how, how did that start something and not simply just be, okay, well, my wife's here, or, oh, okay, the medical team did their job. Everything turned out okay. I didn't really need that prayer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it started a process in a work in me that I finally surrendered and got out of the driver's seat and finally managed to get in the passenger seat. And in that process, I started to learn, and I wanted to learn as much as I could. And while I was not in any formal discipleship settings, probably 4 or 5 years went by. I tried to learn as much as I could about Christ and what it looked like to follow him. And then in 2012, that same daughter, Savannah, came home from high school at this point, and she said she wanted to go on this mission trip to the Brazilian Amazon. And I'm going to tell you, Randy, I had no aspiration of being involved with the church, being involved with a mission organization, certainly leading one, or going on a mission trip to Brazil. That
Right.
was not what I was thinking about at all. So she came home and said this, and my wife and I, we quickly looked at each other and were like, I mean, she'd been to South Texas on mission.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a little better.
Brazil and the Amazon on a boat,
No,
that's
right.
significantly further.
Right. And
So
and not as safe, I mean, right.
no. And so we make this deal with her, and I was sure that I'd solved this problem, Randy. I said, okay, you go ahead and raise all the money because it's going to be like $3,500 to go. And if you do that, mom or I will go with you.
Oh, yeah.
And I had thought,
Yep. Yep. Teenage
you're
daughter.
never going to
Forget
raise
about a
this money.
dad. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So 2 weeks later, maybe 3 weeks later, she had raised all $3,500. And my wife Sherry and I are looking at each other and we're like, what the heck did we just do? So now we decide somebody's got to go with her
Yeah.
to accompany her because we were not comfortable with that, and that became my job. Now, the piece of this that I think is extremely important is my job was only to bring her home.
Hmm.
I didn't go because I had a love or compassion for the Brazilian people at that point. I didn't go because I wanted to go be the hands and feet of Jesus, because
Right. Right.
I didn't even truly know what that meant at that point. My only job was to bring her home.
Yeah.
So we fly into Manaus, Brazil, and we board this open air riverboat, and we go 18 hours into the Amazon basin.
Mm.
I mean, winding through tributaries and seeing parrots flying and giant crocodiles in the water and piranha and other things that will eat you.
Yeah.
And all these things I wasn't prepared to witness. And I think the things that I saw that I wasn't ready to see is I saw people without hope.
Mm.
I saw people that walked up or woke up that day and they had no idea where their next meal is going to come from.
Mm.
They had no idea how they're going to provide for their children's education. And then I saw people drinking out of a river that they thought that was normal. And on that trip is, I think, where God completed what He had started in me in that hospital room with my daughter after the car crash. And He got my attention in a way that I'm not sure He would have got it any other way. And I like to say that trip to Brazil is where God breathed life into the bucket ministry, and most likely where He showed me why He created me.
So I'm curious about the sort of the bucket thing itself. Was this something you were doing on that trip, or was this something that you developed after this trip? How did the actual buckets? It just little insider conversation here. We've looked at a lot of different solutions for clean water in the field, and the filtration systems have been a little tricky. And I'm sure you know some of the difficulties that you can have with them. But how did this come about for you?
Yeah, great question. So I had this experience in this house where a lady handed me a glass of water from the river, and she thought it was normal and I was going to drink it.
Hmm.
So the gravity of the situation dawned on me because prior to this trip, I never even knew that people drank water from a river. I didn't know that there was a world water crisis. I mean, I live my life like most people do. If I'm thirsty, I'm going to go to the refrigerator and put my cup underneath
Right,
the
right.
filter, or I'm going to go buy a bottle of water. So I get back home from that trip in the Amazon with this burden on my heart, and I start researching and trying to make myself an expert in water filtration, water wells, all of it. I just needed to know because I thought what I had heard from God there was just about bringing people clean water. I had no idea the connection to the gospel at that point. So I research water wells, I look at biosand filters, and I bought a bunch of these different types of filtration and tried to make myself an expert. And I honestly think with most things that I subscribe to what we see in Ecclesiastes. There's nothing new underneath the
Yeah.
sun. So I wanted to find a solution that was already out there. So I started researching, and one day my family and I are at a camping supply store here in Dallas called REI. And we're looking at water filters, and I find this filter made by a company called Sawyer that attached to a bucket. So I bought a few of these, Randy, and brought them home, and we tested them, and looked at the lab results, look at the testing that happened, that the company had done on these filters, and I thought, this looks to be the solution.
Mhm.
So 1 year later, we made another trip to the Amazon and brought 80 of these and then rolled them out there. And that's where we learned the connectivity to the gospel. And it was much more than just handing out clean water. It was a vehicle to be able to share the gospel with people. Because in every glass of dirty water are things in it that you and I, as Westerners, if we drink that,
Oh yeah.
we're going to get sick immediately.
Yeah.
And if we keep drinking that, you and I are going to perish,
Mm-hmm.
Randy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot like these things that I know I struggle with in my life, and that's the sin in my life. The connectivity to dirty water, to the sin in our lives, and then seeing what that filter does to that clean water, takes out all the bacteria, all the parasites, and will for over 20 years. So that filter redeems the filter, it restores the water, it renews the water. So it's a perfect illustration of what Christ did on that cross for us.
Yeah.
And so it just became this perfect vehicle to uh, address a physical need, but open the door to talk about the ultimate need, and that is Jesus and a relationship with Him.
It also transforms something that ends in death into something that will actually give life. So
Oh, amen.
right on
Amen.
down the line. All right. I want to show people your website. This is thebucketministry.org. Thebucketministry.org. Very simple solution, going into places where it can make a huge impact. And by the way, if you want to help Christopher and all those who are taking clean water into people that desperately need it, even if they don't realize it, and that is often the case, you can support him right there at thebucketministry.org. And as someone who is on, like I said, on the team, the ministry, the kingdom team, I love what Christopher's doing. And if you want to help him, man, go help him. Okay. Talk to me a little bit about what's happened since then. Because I know you've got some great stories from the ministry work you've been doing, whether it's literally saving, lives or saving villages because of the clean water, or the gospel that's gone out, probably both. But
Yeah.
just pick a little bit of a story so people can see what God has
Yeah.
done through your ministry and in your own life.
Well, in my own life, I'm not quite sure my faith would have been as strong as it is now, solely because I think on a daily basis I get to see miracles and I get to see God work. And one of those has been a place that we now work in about 20 different countries. And one of those countries is Kenya. And in Kenya, there is one of the most notorious informal settlements or slums in the world, right there in Nairobi, Kenya, in the middle of a city of 6 million people. There's a slum there called Kibera. And for many of us as Westerners, and maybe the uninitiated to international travel, this place probably looks the closest that any of us can picture to hell.
Hmm.
There's 81,000 homes in this place within 3 square miles. Average home size 8 by 8, 10 by 10. There's no running water inside the homes. There's no toilets inside the homes. They're dirt floor, and 408,000 people created in God's image are relegated to live there. So I saw this place in 2017 with some friends. We were there in Kenya working, and I kept on running away from it, Randy. I thought this place is too big. We're just a tiny organization. We have no business even considering trying to distribute hope in that place. So finally, after being drugged back there 3 or 4 times, I finally surrendered once again, and we adopted this campaign to serve every person that lives in that place with clean water, generational access to clean water, and to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And just this last December, after 3 years, we were able to distribute a life-saving water filter in 81,777 homes,
Mm.
praise God, and preach the gospel in every one of those homes. And from that, we saw over 22,000 people came to faith. And we have taught currently over 430,000 discipleship lessons in people's homes with a team of 100 indigenous Kenyans,
Mm.
and all of them live in that slum. So we have a campaign that's neighbors ministering to neighbors. There's not an American in the mix other than supporting it and praying over that campaign. And I will tell you, as a tiny organization, I like to look at that Henry Blackaby quote, watch and see where God is working and join him in his work.
Yeah.
So, as a tiny organization, we look at this work, and that was a $4.8 million campaign to put a water filter in every home and preach the gospel in every home. And God provided every penny of that. He provided the laborers, and our only part was obedience, walking through that work with Him. And I'm just here to testify that it's a movement of God that many of us, we hear the term movement of God, but many of us haven't got to see him work like that at that kind of scale. And probably one of the most amazing parts of my life is being able to witness God working amongst 408,000 people sequestered in 3 square miles and delivering hope that may become an antenna for all of Nairobi, all of Kenya, maybe all of Africa for the future, and sending new believers out to carry the gospel out throughout Africa in that place.
Okay, a couple of questions because I know I'll actually be in Nairobi very soon. Not doing that, so I'm glad you're doing that. But a couple of things because one, I love the fact that you have Native people in there ministering. That is always it's not. I mean, you can do it without it, but it's so much better when that's the case. So kudos for that. That's a
Amen.
smart move. Number two, so I know you've probably been doing this long enough. You get the fire from both sides, okay?
Mhm.
When you deliver a bucket, I already know the answer to this question. You don't. There's no required conversion. You don't ask if they're a Christian, right? You deliver buckets to everybody, regardless. Okay.
Muslim, whatever their background is, everyone in that community got a life-saving water filter. And they also got to choose whether they wanted to hear about Jesus. If
Hmm.
they didn't want to hear, we didn't share it with them. And so we leave that up to them. But the water opens doors, Randy.
Yeah, no, I know that 100%. I just sometimes people are like, well, you're just doing this so you can proselytize. It's like, no, we do
Amen.
it anyway, you know.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that, because I know you probably, I don't know, maybe you haven't, but I get irritated with some Christians, and it's the ones that go, I mean, you're saving their bodies, but it's more important to save their souls. Yeah, okay, but I mean, what do you think? Jesus multiplied fish and loaves to give them food because they were hungry. Maybe there's a precedent there. Why do you make sure that the gospel is a part of what you do?
Well, there's probably multiple reasons, but a few of them that I've seen over the last 13 years of this is nobody is going to effectively listen if they're cramping over in and having stomach pains from having horrible runny stomach from drinking horrible water. So there's the physical aspect of when you address such a major need. And listen, you know this, Randy. You don't have to convince anyone they need to drink clean water. Most just don't have access to it.
Yeah.
It's not selling anybody the need that they they have to have clean water. They get that. So when you address a major physical need and you come in love, not asking them for anything else other than you want to help solve something that has been plaguing their life and plaguing their
Mhm.
family's life, it gets their attention
Yeah. Yeah.
in a way that there's a friend that comes and meets them where they are at. And because of that, we hopefully earn the right to share the gospel and we earn the right to start teaching them patterns of discipleship.
Yeah. And they they've all been sick or know someone who's been sick. They probably have had someone close to them die. They know someone who's died from the bad water. That you're 100% right about that. And it's interesting your response because years ago when I was very young, probably my first trip to Africa, I was with our missionary partner down there, Peter Pretorius, and we were feeding children in Mozambique. And I I said something about sharing the gospel and that kind of thing, and he said, "Well, it's really hard for someone who hasn't eaten in several days to hear anything that you're saying. So we fill their bellies, and it opens their ears, and it's the
Amen.
same thing you're saying right there. And the other thing it does, and I know you've seen this, is that people go, "Why are you doing this?"
Yeah.
What American, white guy sometimes like, why do you do this? And then you just tell them, So I think it's hand in hand. I think it's the gospel and word and deed, and that's what Jesus did, and that's what we have to do. I think, and I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's both together because they are hand in hand. All right, here's the last question
Absolutely.
for you.
Yeah.
Um, you're I know a lot of people they're like, wow, this is great that God called him to do that. And I go, you're not off the hook. You've got your place in God's kingdom as well. And it's you probably not traveling to Kenya or starting an entire ministry, but yes, if you're in business and you do well, good for you. Support the bucket ministry, support an outreach. If God's calling you to find that need in your own community and fill it, you know, what do you say to someone who's like, um, do you ever get the "I wish I was in full time ministry" comment, and you want to go, "You are, you just don't realize it." It's like God's
A
called
lot
all
of
of us to do.
times.
What do you say to someone who's maybe God's stirring their heart to do something and they're not sure what?
Well, I hope that my story and certainly other stories becomes a testament and becomes a um, maybe vehicle to get some of those people off the couch that they're hearing this. And what I need you to hear is God does a lot of amazing things through ordinary, uneducated, untrained people.
Mhm.
And the only the only gifting we have to have is just say yes. And I hope that the person that is hearing the story and saying, "Hey, there's just an ordinary business guy that did this," or, you're a business person, you're a follower of Jesus, and you want to do something more than just increase a bank account. You want to start investing that in kingdom wins. I would say there are many places for you to go and to identify um, great uh, great organizations, great people who are investing in others, that it won't take that long to find it. And honestly, I never thought I would be on this journey 13 years later. It's still the best thing I've ever done in my life, and I believe that there's a lot of ordinary people out there that are just thinking, "What can I do?" And I hope that you look through scripture and see examples of other ordinary people doing extraordinary things for the Lord.
I love it. I love it. Okay, I lied about the last question. I got one more. I do that often. What does your daughter think of what you're doing?
Well, it's an interesting story because we just actually had a documentary film team here last week and they interviewed her, and I think she's amazed to see the transformation in her dad, number one. Now, the cool part of this, Randy, is she works part-time with our organization and she handles all of our children's communication. So, on an average daily basis, we get to work together every day, preaching the good news. And to think about where all this started from that single car crash to where it is today, is just a remarkable story and a great witness to what God can do if you just surrender.
I love it. That is so cool. Yeah, that is.
Thank you.
And I know that the bond there.
Oh,
I mean, you couldn't have created that on your own. That's a God thing. Love it. All right. Thank you,
amen.
Christopher.
Never even would have thought of it.
I know. Ladies and gentlemen, don't wait for that car crash. Find out what God is doing, and if He's calling you to do something, get out there and get involved. And a great place to do that is the Bucket Ministry, thebucketministry.org. Check it out. And obviously, the Life Outreach International, we're doing the similar work. But, go where God tells you to go and steward your finances well. Make sure it's an organization that's doing what they say they're doing, and that's taking the gospel. Appreciate you guys being here. Hit that share button if you haven't liked, follow, or subscribe. Please do that. And we'll see you again next time here on Life Today Live.
Nobody can prevent you from doing the will of God.